Hi. Hey, this is Dena Tollefson. So glad that you're here joining me today. And I'm very excited to have a new topic we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about, let me get this centered. We're going to talk about beginning art supplies for beginners, what kind of art supplies you're going to need if you're doing acrylic painting. So I'm going to just turn on my computer over here on this other side so I can watch the chat as people are talking. And all right, there we go. Very good. Okay, so let's talk about what we need to do. So here's just a little painting I did, this little acrylic painting. I did this on a canvas panel, and this is a canvas panel from Blick. And this other little guy, same story. This was on a Frederick's canvas, 9x12. These little supports, these little canvas supports, are one way to do your. They're one way to do your painting. You can also do painting on wood. You can do it on gessoed surfaces. You can do it on stretched canvas. All different kind of things. So we'll get into that in a little bit. And we've got a list here. So I thought I'd get our list started. This is a list of what you need when you're doing this painting. So the first thing that you need when you do this is and also I want to thank you for everyone who's joining on the chat. I appreciate it. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to need is you're going to need what we call a support or a substrate. Okay, so a support or a substrate. So what does that mean? A support or a substrate would be, for example, these little canvas panels. So these are little Blick canvas panels. I like to use these little things. I'll paint on these what I call little honeys. These are little 4x6s. You could just quick studies, that kind of thing. The other kind of substrate that you can use when you're painting in acrylic is, I'm going to just reach over here, is this type of thing. So this is what we call a stretched canvas. And what I've done on the back is, so this is what this is, a stretched canvas consists of, is it will have wood that makes a little frame, and then canvas, actual real like cotton canvas or linen canvas are commonly used, is actually stretched over the outside all the way around. And then in this case, this is called splined. The reason it's called splined is because there's a little, well, actually, you know what? This one technically is not splined. This one's got staples. But you can have staples or splines, and what this does is this allows you to paint on all the edges. You don't require a frame when you do this kind of a support for your acrylics. And so I love to use these. I'll paint, my super thick texture on the top, and then I'll go in and just paint the edges. Just a solid color, something that might go with a painting, that type of thing. And then on the back, I've already attached the hardware on the back here, and this is what I recommend using. These are called D-rings, and you put the D-ring on and you just screw it in. I have my husband put these in because it takes quite a bit of hand strength to use them. But oh, Joy DeV, hi Dena, just popping on, interested to learn. I'm painting a bit now in my various art and junk journals. Yes, and I'm a subscriber of Joey, and hello to others on this stream, yes. And I appreciate that that you're writing me comments. Go ahead and continue writing comments. That's great. I love to hear from everybody. So yeah, and your junk journals, absolutely. Painting is an important element in them, absolutely. So, so anyway, back on these, what you can put on to hold your, if you're not going to frame it, which is typically these are just, unframed. You can put a frame on the outside if you like, and then you put these D-rings on, and then you can take a piece of wire, stretch the wire on, and then just connect it like that, and there you go. And that is literally ready to paint. So the question that some people have is, how do I know if I can paint on something? Like, how do I know if it's safe to paint on it or if it would accept the paint? So, so these little canvas panels and these stretched canvas, so this is called a canvas panel. And what that is sometimes it's an acid-free cardboard. Sometimes on larger ones, they will use like a plastic type of thing. And yes, it does. And Joy to V, yes, it does bring color easily to a page. Absolutely. And so these panels, what's nice about the panels, I guess they're a drawback, and there's a good and a bad. The good thing about a panel is they are easy to stack. You can do tons of paintings and they don't take up very much room. They're strong. You can lay them on top of each other if you like, that kind of thing. And they're inexpensive. The negative is when you get into very large sizes, say 18 by 24, 24 by 36, something like that, a panel actually needs to be thicker, and you want to get the ones that will not warp, because they can warp a little bit in large sizes. You do have to use a frame with these. Now, you have some framing options. You can, just go buy a frame from somewhere. You can have a custom frame made, that type of thing. You can also put these can be mounted and put also under glass. But I'll show you what I do with these. So I've got these are just the same, and it's funny because it's like when it's not painted, when something's not painted or unpainted, it looks like it's smaller than it is. Once you put paint on it, it kind of looks bigger. But these are just some little studies that I used to like to use these little guys for. Is I was trying to decide how I wanted to paint a tree series. And so what I did is I made myself what I'll call some little thumbnails. These fun little sizes, but what this allowed me to do is to figure out, what kind of composition I might want, that type of thing. So that's how I'll sometimes use these little panels. These are just little unfinished studies that I'll use, and from that then I can decide how to make a large painting. They are like artist trading cards. They are, Joy to V, yes, absolutely. They, I think that may be the size for an artist trading card. And it's pencil. Oh, hey, pencil. Pencil connoisseur has joined, and it's great to see you on here also. And these little sizes are really nice because, let's say, for example, I was working out a color scheme, or let's take this guy, for example. And I look at that and I say, oh, you know what, I'm wondering about this element, or what if I put another tree here, or what if I change the horizon line? This is something I can either make another one of these or just modify this very quickly. And if I have it on a very large canvas, a super big one, then it's harder to make changes, and it's kind of nice just to work with these little sizes. So that's another use for these tiny little substrates, these little canvases. Then I'll show you what I've got over here too. Is move this over here. Is this painting? So this painting, sometimes I will use these paintings, this little canvases, and of course this one has to be framed. But I will either use this as a study for a very large painting, or I might use it as on its own as an underpainting for the texture that's going to go on top. And in fact, that's what this one's going to be, and this one also. It's a way for me to, test out my colors and that type of thing. So the question may be, hey, why don't you just always use these little flat guys? Well, oftentimes I want to be able to paint on something and then not have to frame it. And so that's the solution. That's the solution here with these substrates, with this stretched canvas. When you go and buy this stretched canvas, you can buy it from many different sources. And I happen to like, this is 1.5 inches thick. I happen to like that thickness. But the other, I'll show you, I've got another one here. Oh, Joy to V says, Dena, you have a very nice style of talking and explaining on a stream. Thank you so much. Hugs to you. Hugs to you. So here's another, I showed you this, this canvas. This one is from Blick, their Premier series. This is an Arteza canvas. And if you look on the back, you can see that it's thinner. So these are just like 5/8 inch thick. And this is the 11 by 14 size. It's stapled on the back, but you'll see The thing that's the same between is they both have this wood frame, and then they have the canvas. And so you will see that the canvas below is a different color than the canvas on the top. And what that is that you're seeing is what we call gesso, or what is called gesso. Gesso is the thing that is, so if you have your just actual canvas, like a picture like blue jeans, I mean, that's like a canvas. But there's a special fabric called canvas duck, and then they will put a certain number of layers of gesso on top. And what that does, and you love Arteza, they make great stuff. Pencil, they do. Absolutely, they do. And I'm a affiliate of Arteza, so they send me free things periodically, which I love. And then I get to try them out and have fun with them. So, and in fact, that's just a thing to talk about here too. I am also, in addition to an Arteza affiliate, I am also a what they call an Amazon influencer, and I'm going to put the site on here. So if you guys are looking for the actual supplies that we're talking about today, and then a bunch of other things, you can go to my Amazon site, which is, I have a page called, I'm an Amazon influencer. So there's a page I have things like easels and brushes and paints and art books and all these different things that I've curated out and found on Amazon that are great things that I would recommend. So if you go to Amazon.com/shop/Dena Tollefson. Okay, so if you go to that exact link, and again, if you go into Amazon and then do a search on my name, you won't actually find it. You have to go directly on here. And I receive compensation from Amazon, but it is of no additional cost to you. So I encourage you to pop on out there and see all the things. I've got art supplies listed out by professional grade and by student grade, and then easels and books and all that other good stuff. So anyway, I'll just leave this over here. We'll stick that up here. Okay, so back to these canvases. Yes, it's in the description box down below. That's right, Jolie, absolutely. So the canvas, so if you take a look at this canvas, can you see, it's kind of subtle, but if you can see, there's a little different thickness of the canvas. This is a little thinner canvas. Usually the smaller the canvas that you have, typically the thinner the canvas will be because it doesn't need to be very thick. And what you want to look for is and here's what they come when you first get it. They come like shrink wrapped. So you just take your shrink wrap off, and then literally it's ready to go, ready to receive paint. But let me tell you, I have a little trick of what to do. Let's say that you get your canvas and then you find, oh my goodness, I have a terrible lump in my canvas. And in fact, actually there's a little lump in this one right here. If you can kind of see over here, there's a little divot in the canvas. And I will show you, there is a secret of how you will fix that, and it makes it tight as a drum again, and you don't need anything other than, oh, you wrote it down. Thank you, pencil. So all you do, and I'll just grab a brush here, and I have some water. I'm going to reach across and get my water. This is an old sherbet container. So when I'm running low on the containers, I ask everybody to drink some sherbet or eat some sherbet and then give me the container. I'm just taking plain water and a clean brush, and what you do is you just literally take and if you go and have your painting conserved, this is all that they do for you. It is literally, you don't get anything more. You can do this yourself. What this does is you just go and take water. Don't put too much on. See, I'm just putting a small amount on. And what you can also do this with a mister, like you can just spray with a mister. Oh, hey, Homa Shahabi. Great to see you. Thank you for joining. So, so what you can do is you can just get like this, and this is all you need to do. It's important to get the entire surface damp. You don't want to get it wet, but just damp. And I'm just going to run my finger across that. Just have a little bit of water on here. And then if you flip it around, in about 5 minutes, it's already happening, the entire surface will tighten up and it is ready to go. And if you, let's say you had a painting in the closet, and so, hey Brenda Maxon, hey, good to see you, Brenda, thank you for joining. So, and also if you guys will give me a like, I would appreciate it too, and I appreciate your support and that everybody is here. So what you can do now is you see that this canvas has gotten tight, and I've also done that. If listen to that. It's literally tight as a drum. Sounds like a drum. But what you can do is, and look at that. Look at that, it's beautiful. So now it's just tight and it's just as pristine as what you had. It also, if you have a painting that was done on stretched canvas, feel how tight that is? It's fantastic. So what you, whoopsie, I just hit my phone, sorry. Sorry about that. So what you can do is if you also, let's say you had painted this and then you inadvertently got a divot in it. It didn't break through, but it was, you know, kind of like making a little lump. Go ahead and do that thing with the water, and that's a little, just a nice little tip. So I'm going to put that on our tip list here. So, so use water to dampen the back of a stretched canvas if it gets deformed. That's just a fun little, and hey Carrie, great to see you. Okay, so that's a fun little tip, that if it gets deformed, because before I knew about this trick, I had actually thrown out or given away so many stretched canvases because I can't sell the canvas if I've got a big lump on it and that kind of thing. And this literally rehabilitates it and turns it back to its original, look at that, back to its original state. And I'm just going to kind of move it. So anyway, that's the discussion about substrates. So you can also paint with acrylics. So back to our list, what you need a support or a substrate. So they call it your painting support. Some people might think that that means an easel, but an easel is actually something else, and we'll get into that in a little bit. So the next thing that you need when you're starting out with acrylic paints is paint. Got to have the paint, the acrylic paint. So, and I'll just say that literally that is all you technically need. Is you need support, something to paint on, you know, a canvas or a canvas panel, a board. You can do, they have these wonderful gessoed surfaces that are, you know, wood on the side, and they've got gesso ready for paint. But you just need, you know, something to put the paint on and the actual paint, and that literally is all that you need. And so you might think, well, gosh, you know, don't you need, you know, brushes and such? And how many people, I want you guys to write in, do you, what do you typically use, stretched canvas, or on the chat, are you guys typically using a board, or do you use something else? Do you use like, sometimes people will paint onto a palette, or joie de vie? I think you're using, I believe that you're painting directly onto cards and onto other paper surfaces. So let me know in the chat what you guys are using, or what's your preferred. So let's talk now about paint. All right, I'm going to reach across here and grab these are paints when I go and I do plein air painting. This is the set of all the colors that I'll use. So, and I just keep them in a little Ziploc bag when I'm not using them. And oops, you know what, let me just hang my phone up over here. Someone's calling me. Okay, there. Sorry about that interruption. I had to turn up, otherwise they're gonna keep calling, or we'll get the answering machine and all that. So anyway, so here are the colors that I will tend to use. And let's lay them out like the color wheel. And you really don't actually need that many colors when you're painting. So in acrylics, let's see here, and I guess yellow ochre should go over here. And you know, this isn't actually color wheel. There we go, that's a little better. And then I will also use additional colors in there as well, but this is my basic set. So titanium white, and I'm, okay, so let's see here. So coloring book, so Casey uses, Carrie Reynolds uses, I said Casey Reynolds, Carrie Reynolds, I'm sorry, Carrie. Carrie Reynolds uses coloring book, Brenda uses canvas, and Pencil Connoisseur says, I haven't painted in a while, but watching you, I'm gonna start painting again. Okay, yay, Pencil, that's good, 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 good. Okay, so titanium white, you're gonna wanna get a large container of titanium white. I get this is a 5mm tube. You can also get it in bigger containers, and you can get smaller ones like these little guys. Naphthol red light, this is a nice substitute for cad red. Diarylide yellow, this makes kind of a nice, it's a I'll have to open it up. This diarylide yellow is like, look at that, it's so pretty. It's like sunshine in a can, sunshine in a tube. Primary yellow, and the nice thing about this particular brand, Golden, what you see, the color that you see here is actually a little smear of the actual paint. There are other paint brands that, oh, thank you, Carrie, hugs to you. So there are other paint brands that sometimes you look at the label and it's like, what even is that? I can't tell the color, but Golden is really nice about having an actual little smear of the color, and then you can tell how transparent or how opaque it is. But yellow ochre, phthalo blue red shade, I use two different blues. I use a phthalo blue red shade and an ultramarine blue, dioxazine purple, and a Mars black. Now, you might wonder, why don't you see a green in here? It's because I mix Mars black and these three different yellows to make my greens. Sometimes I will use ultramarine blue to make those, or phthalo blue, and so I can make just a ton of different colors of green without actually needing green. And if you get right down to it, some purists will say, and this is true, that you only need these colors. If you are starting out, these are the only colors that you need. You need, technically, all you need really is, and then, oh, okay, so, and Carrie says, I haven't painted since I was a kid, pencils, LOL, so I love learning this. And then Carrie says, thank you, I'm excited, you're live too. And thank you, and also thank you guys, everyone, and thank you for your likes, and thank you for watching. So, so really, technically, all you need is a red, a true red, a true yellow, a true blue, typically ultramarine, black and white, and you can mix you know, many different colors. There are a few specific things that are a little harder to do, but you actually can get by just on this set. So these are Golden colors, and you know what I'm actually going to do now is I'm just going to pull over my container, because I have just a huge container that I store my acrylic paints in. So what I showed you was my little travel set, but here is my here's the mother load. Okay. So these are the colors, and these are the size I typically work with. I work with these, the 5 ounce, you know, basically for everything, or 200 mil, 150 mil when it's possible. And so look at these colors. So I've got teal, green gold, Hansa yellow light, phthalo blue red shade, cobalt blue hue, yellow ochre, diarylide yellow, permanent violet dark. Lots of great colors. But I found that when I'm painting, if I just try and stay with a couple of colors, it actually works better for me. Mixing too many different colors in at one time can actually become problematic. So I'm going to also show you a couple other brands now. So I showed you the golden, and let me reach over here and grab this. All right, and then, oh, and thank you, Pencil. Pencil says, I'm enjoying learning these things from Dena to help me get into it again, and I'm glad this is helpful to you guys. So, so the paint that I first showed you was called Golden Heavy-Bodied Acrylic. And so the heavy-bodied acrylics are super thick when they come out of the tube, and they have kind of a, I don't know, kind of a feeling like mayonnaise or toothpaste, that kind of consistency. And what you can also use, and I have a lot of friends who will use these too, and this yellow ochre, this fluid acrylic yellow ochre, just you hear that sound. Isn't that a beautiful sound? Oh, and Carrie says, she teaches so well, she's so calm, it helps my anxiety. And hugs to you, you guys. You guys are so sweet and wonderful, and I appreciate you. So this fluid acrylic, this is what I like to use when I tone a canvas. So let me just toss a little bit. I'll just put a little bit on here now. This is, you see how that just comes right out of the, just comes right on out of the container. And then I'll just go ahead and put a little bit on here. So this particular canvas will just have a little bit more toning. But that's all there is to it. That's how I tone the canvas and get it started. Put my brush, I'm gonna stick this in water, because if I don't put it in water, then it will dry out and it'll ruin my brush. So there's another tip. That's a good tip. Always keep your brushes clean and wet when paint is on. Okay, so what we mean by that is, and I'll just pull this guy back over here. So in here I've got the brush is had the yellow ochre in it, and I just keep a little bit of water. And I just use these little containers. This is again, this is just a sherbet container. You can use ice cream container, whatever you like. The key is don't use something that is going to tip over. In fact, that's another tip. Wastewater in a non-tip container. There's nothing more nasty is if you have your little bucket of water, and let's say you put it in like a solo cup or something like that. Well, the handles on the paintbrushes can be heavy, and then all of a sudden, or you might be in the wind, or you somehow knock it over. You want something sturdy that's not going to fall over. So you can just put the brush in here. In fact, what I'll do, I'll bring my other container over. Here's the other container. So I'll keep nice water in one, and then cruddy water in the other. And then when I need to grab fresh water, just grab it right in there. So, hi, Halil Ibrahim, and I hope I'm pronouncing you properly. Halil Ibrahim, I believe is how to say it. So welcome, thank you for joining. So, so what we'll do is just set this container. I got this other container to show you out how I actually clean the brush when it's done. So the key here is I have just a little container that I just keep refilling with dishwashing liquid. You want to use super gentle, you can use baby shampoo or just, hand soap that you would put with dishwasher. You want to have something that's not like, don't use like a hand disinfectant or something like that. It won't work properly on the brush and it can dry the brushes out. So you want something like a dishwashing liquid, a gentle dishwashing liquid, and just swish it in there and then make sure all the paint is out, and then just let it air dry. And your brushes will last you literally for decades if you take care of them. All right, so talking about paint, so back to paint. So this is the Grumbacher Academy Acrylic. So Grumbacher makes paint. And then I know I've got some over here too. Oh yes, okay, so Winsor & Newton makes their Affinity acrylics are wonderful. And then let me grab the Arteza set that's over here. I like all your paintings, Dena. Thank you. Halil Ibrahim, and I'm really sorry if I'm not saying your name properly. Okay, so let's just open up this set of the Arteza. So if you're wondering, you know, what colors to get, you can buy individual tubes, or you can just go and buy a set like this Arteza set. And I do recommend that you try and buy as nice of a paint as you can afford, because paint at any one time, unless you're doing, I'm doing this very heavy imposter technique. But yes, isn't Arteza wonderful? What's nice is you can, here, the one thing I would recommend though is if you do get a set, like a set of these Arteza, this is their premium acrylic. So we've got here, I'll show you all the colors that you get. Phthalo green, pale green, ultramarine blue, phthalo blue red shade, burnt umber, Mars black, titanium white, lemon yellow, this one's yellow ochre, one of my favorites, scarlet red, burnt sienna, and crimson. Now the one thing is some of these colors look a little bit different when you open the container, so be aware of that with the Arteza. For example, the crimson, it looks a little bit more brown on the label, and I'll just open this up and show you here. And so, yeah, everybody loves Arteza. Okay, and Carrie says, I have their woodless watercolor pencils. That's one reason I watch painting, is because watercolor is hard to control and can frustrate me. Yeah, I hear you on that. Those watercolor pencils are fantastic. So do you see that the color of the red is a little bit more bright than the actual label? So on, if they're actually putting the paint on the label like they do with golden, you know, you can trust the color. If not, you know, just open it up to take a look. So I'll show you here. Scarlet red is actually a super bright red. There we go. And when you're, another thing is always keep the lid on your acrylic paint, or if you're doing oils. If it's not in use, put the lid right back on, because if the lid isn't on, then that's the beginning of the end of the paint, because it has to have an airtight seal or it will dry out and get very yucky. Okay, so we talked about paint. The next thing that you'll need in starting acrylics is that you're going to need a, whoops, let me reach over here. There we go. I've got stuff everywhere here on my counter. Okay. All right, so the other thing you're going to need then, back to this, is tools. All right, so, what are tools? Tools are going to be anything that you use to get the paint and your support. So you've got your substrate, you've got your paint, and then now in order to get the paint onto here, the tool can literally be your fingers. I know of several artists who are professional artists. They are finger paint artists. And if you're familiar with Iris Scott, she's also at Edelman Fine Art, the same gallery I'm in San Diego. Iris Scott, she's out of New York City. She wears gloves, and she's using oil paint, but she rakes her fingers across and paints just only with just her fingers. So in Iris's case, she could have just the support and the paint, and then her tool that she's using would be the gloves that she's wearing and her fingers. But for everybody else, that's me included, is that, because I don't actually like to get dirty, so, so that method does not work for me. What works for me is I like to use brushes, and I like to use palette knives. But there are many different things that you can use. There are brushes that have, I know for those of you who do cards, who do a lot of art on cards, they have like these pouncing tools, and they have different things, different kinds, different sizes of brushes, different types of things. You can use paper towel, you can use rags, You can, well, if you, I suppose, you actually could roll yourself in paint and use your body as an object to paint, but that's a little extreme. But what's kind of more, normal or mainstream would be to use brushes. So let me get some brushes out here. And I'll say that the only brushes that you actually need, you really only need 2 brushes, in my opinion, to make a painting that would be, say, something like this, a little 8x10 size or 11x14. You technically only need 2 brushes. And this is coming from the idea that my mother, Helen Schaefer, always says you only need to live, what is it? She always says you only need like a cup and a bowl, or a plate and a bowl, or something like that. But technically, all you need really to get the job done is you need a tiny brush. This one's an American Painter, a liner brush. This is a 4350. It's called a liner. And what this little guy does, this is what you sign your name with. And so if you want to, some people will sign their name in pencil, some people sign their name with a Sharpie, some, different things like that. But if you want to be, as I sign my name in paint, and so this little guy is indispensable for that. The other size, so this is called and it's actually called I'll bring it up really closely. You can see this is called the 4350 liner. Now the liner brush, you can also get a size 1 or a size 0 brush. But do you see that long, kind of a long tip on there? What that does is that makes a beautiful point. You get your paint kind of really watered down, and then you can sign your name very easily with that. So let me grab that little, here. So, when I signed this, for example, let me get it over here. So when I signed over here, then I used a liner brush to do my signature. And it's just as simple as that. Super easy. But you need to have a tiny little one, and what's nice is if you have this tiny little brush like this, if you wanted to put like any tiny little, any kind of really very fine detail on something, you can use this brush also. Then the other brush that you can use would be either a flat, so their brushes come in flats, they come in daggers, they come in all different filberts, all different kinds of shapes. Wedge, here's a kind of a wedge shaped brush. This is by Low Cornell. I like these Low Cornell brushes. On my, if you look over here in my Amazon shop, you can see these things come in a package and they're like super inexpensive. But gosh, I use these things for everything. I've got in there's like a set of rounds. These are the round brushes because the edges are round. And then the flats, with a flat edge, that kind of thing. So, and the other thing that I recommend is, and here's a tip, is something to avoid. Whoops, oh no. Avoid cheap brushes. Okay, so one thing here, and I want you guys to write in if you've run into this same problem, is that you go and then you go over. I'm gonna grab my little brush hoard here. You're at the store, and then you see, oh my goodness, look, I want to get another brush, that kind of thing. And then you go and you look and you say, oh, look at these brushes. I can get 50 brushes for $10 or something like that. And it's tempting to buy these cheap brushes because they look the same. In the store, they kind of look the same as the expensive brushes. But what happens is, with one use, they put a chemical sizing on the outside of the brush so it stays nice inside the store. And when you get it home, then they're gonna like open up and they're not gonna be very easy to use. And you won't be able to get the marks that you want. So I recommend that it would be way better to get fewer brushes and take really good care of them. Keep them wet when you're not using them, wash them out right away when you're done, and you'll be able to use these for years. And you'll actually save money, and you'll be a lot happier, I think, with your work because you're using a higher quality brush. Now these brushes are not, you know, these are not a crazy expensive thing. These are, you know, really rather inexpensive. The American Painter and the Low Cornell. These are just kind of nice standard brushes to use. And it's really easy to, you know, just keep them fresh, keep them nice. The other thing, the other kind of tools that you can use would be palette knives. And let me know too in the chat if you guys use palette knives. So palette knives are nice for acrylic painting. You can use the knife and you can take the paint and you can mix your paint with your knife, and then that way the paint does not get up into the inside of your paintbrush. And once it gets up inside, this is called the ferrule of the brush, F-E-R-R-U-L-E, up in here. If you get paint stuck up inside of here, and especially if it gets dry, then what happens is that the, oh, and Brenda says, I do some, especially since watching you. Okay, yeah, there we go, there we go. Yeah, and these knives are really nice for just taking the paint and mixing it, and then what happens is when you put your brush on, you don't use the brush to mix the paint, and so you don't waste paint and you don't get paint up in the brush. So that's an important, you know, it's an important thing to consider. Absolutely. Okay, so the next thing to talk about here under the idea of supports and the tools. So we've talked about brushes, we've talked about palette knives. I want to just show you, look at this palette knife. This is the king of palette knives. I mean, look at this guy. Look at all this paint that you can move around with this thing. Let's see who makes this. Oh, Blick makes this one. This is pretty fabulous. Okay, but I've got all different shapes of knives. This new one I recently got this is the RGM 60. So RGM makes this and licenses it to Blick. But look at the shape on that thing, it's pretty great. So I'll just, and you know what, now that we're talking about it, let me grab, I'm gonna grab my Sta-wet palette and show you something with that. So here we go. So under the category of tools, the next thing that we can talk about is what are you going to put your paint on? And I'm going to be having an upcoming video just talking about the Sta-wet palette, which is this red guy underneath here. But this is the Wave palette. This is also out on Amazon. These are disposable, and there's like 50 sheets in here. It's ergonomic. You put your thumb through here, and then your paint goes, you know, like so on here. And then you can paint with that. I'll say the negative with something like this is this is great for oil paint, but for acrylic, you have to mist or spray with a light mist to keep your paint at the right humidity. If you use something here, like the Sta-wet palette, which is underneath here, then your paint stays at the perfect humidity. So I'm gonna lift the lid off here. Whoopsie. Oh dear. A technical issue here. It fell out of its little spot. Sorry about that, if that was jarring. Goodness. Woke everybody up there. Okay. Sorry. All right, so this lid, see that lid? Just sits on top, and I have had this paint out for about a week, and it is just as perfect a shape as it was the day it was born, right? The day your mother made you, kind of a thing. But just look how luscious and fresh that is. And it's just in a perfect shape. So what this consists of is there's the container itself, and then there's a sponge that you get wet, just damp, not too wet, and then there's this paper, and this paper is the magic paper. And so, hey Eve Harvey Artisan, and thanks for joining, Eve. So, so this little paper that you put on and activate is acting like a moisture wick between the paper on the top and the sponge, and it keeps your paint at literally the perfect consistency. Can you just see how fabulous? I'm going to bring this up really close. Just look at how amazingly great that is. and that's been a week. So again, if you watch the video that's coming up about the Masterson Sta-wet palette, you can kind of see the deal here. So now do you see this tool? I've got paint on this tool, so I have a choice. I can either put it somewhere where I'm going to wrap it up and do that with it, or I should get it in right into my water, and then I'll do that now, because the trick here is always keep your tools clean and paint free, and then they will be wonderful for decades. So I'll just go and give him a little bath. This is like bathing an infant or a dog. My little dog Muffin got a bath the other day, and she looks so funny without her all of her fur. Well, she had her fur, but it was wet. Okay, so perfect. So, and then the other thing too is when you, something like a metal object like this, you don't want to leave this soaking in there for very long, just a minute or two. And the same thing, your brush, this is the ferrule. Try and keep it so that you can get water up to here, but you don't want to get water up on here on your brush. It's not good for it. So do you see that amount of water I've got in there? That's just about right for, there we go. Just about right for keeping the bristles so that they don't get dried out and yucky. And you're not late, Eve. You're good. You're good. All right. So back to so what we need. So we talked about the support and the substrate, which would be the canvas, that kind of thing, the paints, and the tools. And so now let's just talk a little bit now about extras. So extras would be things that that you can take with your acrylic painting and take it to another level. So there are powders and mediums and all kinds of things that you can add to your acrylic paint to modify it, to change it, that type of thing. So I'm going to reach across here and grab another product here. This is called acrylic glazing liquid. So if you are used to using, say, oil paint, and you're thinking, oh no, I don't want to do acrylic because everybody warns me that it dries so fast. Well, what you can do is you can put in, and this stuff is, it's just kind of a nice liquidy thing, and you just go in there and then you just squeeze this onto your palette. And in fact, I'll do that right now. If I'm wanting to make say subtle effects on a painting, so I just put a little bit, and you can, the ratio that you put on here, it looks a little bit like Elmer's glue when it comes out. And this one is satin. You can also get it in a like a fully shiny version. I prefer the satin myself. But if you're going to do, for example, glazing, so what you would do is, this is more of an advanced kind of a thing. So, so again, for a beginner, you might go right away into wanting to learn to glaze. But you see that I take a small amount of the paint and then I mix it in with a knife. What you don't want to do is don't try and mix with just a paintbrush. I mean, you can, but it's actually a little easier, a little nicer if you do it with the knife. Now, and I'm going to get this up a little closer so you can take a look. Do you see that this has a little different color? It's a little bit lighter if that shows up on the camera. It's slightly lighter and it's more gloppy and more kind of thick than the original paint. And what you can do then is you can now, and you can even put quite a bit more on. You can make it quite thin. So what this is when you paint, and if you just added water, for example, to your acrylic paint, you're not going to be able to make it as transparent as you can when you put a little bit of medium into it to thin it out. But look at that when I move this just even across on the palette paper. Look what a nice, beautiful, thin coating I can put on. So I could modify an existing painting by layering many, many colors over. And that's it's a neat technique. A lot of artists will do glazing. If you're glazing in oil and you're using a medium, you have to wait like for it to dry in between coats. and that can be anywhere from, if you're painting very thinly, a couple hours to a couple days in between layers. And if you're doing some very complicated like detail work, and do you see how nicely this works when I add the medium in there? Look at that. I can make these wonderful lines with this, and it's really easy to use. Then I can lay these on, and these will be dry. It slows down the working time. So if I put this in, it'll actually slow down the working of how fast it dries. But I can actually use it for glazing, which is kind of great. So let me get this guy. Let's get him cleaned up too. There we go. Okay. All right, great. So, so we talked about this palette, this Sta-wet palette, and different things, and there are so many different, you know, Golden makes a lot of great different additives that you can put in. And I know some of you that make cards. Oh, and Eve is asking, have you always used acrylics? Eve, I started out using oils, and I sat at my mother's side. Now I'm 53, and I sat at my mother's side, and she allowed me to use, she's an artist, she allowed me to use her Grumbacher oils, and she would squeeze a tiny amount on the palette, and she and I would paint next to each other. But that started my love of painting, and then I used acrylics. So I used oils really, I would say, for the first couple of decades, and then I switched over to acrylics, and then I used them kind of interchangeably on my different works. So, but that's a great question. All right, so now let's see, there was one other thing. Oh yeah, easels. So the last thing I want to talk about is easels. So, so you have two choices. Well, you have multiple choices, but one choice that you have, so under the extras discussion, one thing that you can do is you can just paint on a flat surface. So for example, you know, I'll get my little guy back out here, this little study for trees. Let's say that you know, I just want to paint him on a tabletop. I can stand up and paint, or I can sit at a table and paint with him, that kind of a thing. But when I'm working on stretched canvas, it's almost a little easier if your stretched canvas, or your other canvas too. It's kind of nice if you can get it up on an angle. And so when you do that, you'll want to get an easel. And so this is just a wonderful, I've painted with these easels for decades. These are just a nice, you can take these outside, they fold up into like nothing. So this is an easel that will, it looks like so. And Eve says, that's so cool, literally. No one in my family is into art like me. Oh, maybe you're really my daughter in like another, in a parallel universe. But they do like seeing all my drawings and just can't draw themselves. But you know what? They can appreciate your work, Eve, is what it is. So, okay, so I'm just going to show you how this easel sets up. So it folds in the middle, and then you fold yourself in the middle, right? And then it goes out, and you can put the little stand like that, and literally then it's ready to go. And so you can put your thing you're painting on right here, and I'll just lift up and show you what that looks like. So if you can see, it's super nice. There is also and I'm gonna just move this out here to show you, there is an attachment on this little puppy. So take a look. And, oh, and Pencil says, don't worry about that, Eve. Yes, exactly, exactly. All right, so there's an extension on the mast so that you can do like a 16 by 20, and you can put that on here and it won't fall over. So I'll just set this back up here like so, and that's all there is. So do you guys have any questions for me or any other topics? I think I've covered everything I wanted to cover today. Do you guys have any other things that you'd want to talk about? Anything I didn't mention? Go ahead and put those in the comments. So I'm also planning to do a live stream talking about brushes, different kinds of brushes and how to care for them, and then what kind of marks they make and what you can do with them. And then I'm also thinking about doing also another thing on oil supplies for beginning painters and watercolor supplies for beginner painters. So, okay, and then and Eve Harvey Art says, haha, yeah, my granddad still doesn't understand that I don't trace my drawings. And you know, if any of you have not yet subscribed to Eve Harvey Art, you have to see her doing her live streams. It's really fantastic. But her time-lapse paintings, she's extremely talented, very young person, extremely talented, and she's doing it all freehand, which is, you know, it's beautiful, fantastic work. So, all right, you guys. So I want to thank everybody, and please give me a thumbs up and give me a comment if you would. And I appreciate you watching. And let's see. Oh, somebody's writing something. Okay, somebody said, thank you so much. I'll be coming back next stream about brushes. Okay, fantastic. So I appreciate you guys. And so Pencil says he'll be coming back. And thank you, everyone. And hope that you'll come back to my next live stream. And I hope that you have a great weekend. And until next time, this is Dena Tollefson. Bye-bye.